Boom. There you go.
Okay, Margie, you think we're ready to go?
Director Murillo is trying to log in. I just sent her the login from information. So just hold on one sec, see if she's able to log in. And she might have my name on her her login, so we'll see. Okay. But yes, we do have a quorum. And there she is. And Murillo, Director Murillo, you may need to change your name because right now it says Margie Kern.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So we're good to go, Chair Sierra.
All righty, then I am officially calling this meeting to order. Hold on. One moment, please. Ready to go. All righty. I hereby call the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, the meeting for Thursday, May 20th, 2021 to order. If I could get a roll call, please.
Director Williams,
Here.
Hart,
Here.
Hartman,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Levanino,
Here.
Urig.
Here.
Thank you. Julian,
Here.
Osborne,
Here.
Patino, Parodi,
Here.
Clark, Murillo,
Here.
and Chair Sierra.
Here. Thank you very much. If I could get the clerk to remind participants of remote participation housekeeping before we start the agenda.
Just a couple of Zoom reminders. Participants, please remember to mute your mic when you're not speaking. If you request to speak, please use the raise your hand button. All attendees will remain in the listen only mode unless admitted by SBCAG staff. If you would like to speak during public comment, please remember to raise your hand or use your *9 button if you call in. Thank you. And that's my Zoom reminders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All righty. If everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Moving on to public comment. Is there any public comment that's been provided in advance?
Chair Sierra will receive no public comment for general public comment. And I see no request to speak.
Thank you very much. Item 4 is approval of the consent calendar. I know that Director Williams will need to recuse himself from item 4L. Would directors like to pull any items from the consent calendar?
I'd like to pull item J.
All righty.
I'll,
For J,
Madam
Director
Chair, I'll
Nelson.
move the balance of the consent calendar without.
Okay,
L.
is there any public comment before we get a second on the motion?
Chair Sierra, we actually have received 2 public comments, one for item 4B and one for item 4N. So I will read those into the record before I provide the public comment.
Thank you. What was that?
I can hold off on the motion until public comment.
Thank you, Director
Okay,
Williams.
Thank you. Item 4B, rebuilding American infrastructure with sustainability and equity grant application for the Santa Barbara US 101 multimodal corridor. Authorize staff to submit a funding grant application to the Federal Department of Transportation for the Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity discretionary grant program for the US 101 multimodal corridor. And we've received a public comment from Mr. Tom Becker, and he states no federal funding should be approved for transportation projects that fail to reduce VMT, or in this case, induce increases in VMT. And the next item is 4N, which is zero emissions over the road coach contract. Approve and authorize the chair to execute an agreement with BYD to purchase up to 5 battery powered over the road coaches funded by a transit and intercity rail program grant with a period of performance from May 2021 to December 31st, 2022 for an amount not to exceed $4,250,000. 4N2, approve and authorize the executive director to extend the period of performance by 1 year and to make immaterial amendments in accordance with agreement sections 4B and 34. And public comment is also from Mr. Tom Becker. The cost of electric vehicles have not decreased and have actually increased. This contradicts statements submitted by the state of California to federal agencies in opposition to the revocation of the state's emission waiver. It also contradicts statements submitted by the state to federal agencies in opposition to the revision of federal CAFE standards and federal GHG emission standards. Thank you. And those are my public comments for those 2 consent items.
Thank you very much. And Director Williams, before you make your motion, perhaps we could hear from Director Nelson about 4J.
Sure, then
Please.
I might add it.
Would you, hold on, just go ahead and read it?
I'm going to read that item into the record. Item 4J, Highway 166 Black Road intersection improvements. Approve and authorize the executive director to execute a purchase agreement and any additional documents required to record the grant deed with the Vecchioli Family Trust for the purchase of real property, APN number 117-191-005, associated with the construction of the Highway 166 Black Road in the amount of $5,000.
Thank you. Director Nelson?
Yes, just had a couple questions for Mr. Luna on this one. My understanding is, what was our initial offer on this and what was the counteroffer?
Director Nelson, through the chair. Thank you for the question. So our initial offer, based on the appraised value, was $3,200. The board had given us authority up to $4,000, and so the settlement was reached at $5,000.
Okay, great. And again, can you remind me for a moment what the actual acreage is of that small sliver?
I believe it's about a little less than 1/10 of an acre.
Okay. All right. Just from my experience, and then we're on target there at $5,000. So thank you.
All righty. Thank you. Any other questions from directors regarding the consent calendar or consent? Yeah, calendar. All righty. Director Williams, would you like to make a motion?
I'll move the balance of the consent calendar, including J.
Thank you. With the exception of 4L. Do I have a second?
Hartman seconds.
Urick seconds.
Hartman got
Thank
the
you.
first.
Thank you very much. Clerk?
Director Williams,
Aye.
Hart,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Lavanino,
Aye.
Eurig,
Aye.
Julian,
Aye.
Osborne,
Aye.
Patino, Perotti,
Aye.
Clark, Murillo,
Aye.
and Chair Sierra.
Aye. Thank you.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much. I see Director Williams has stepped out for item 4L. Do we need to read it into? Please go ahead, Terry.
Thank you, Chair Sierra. Item 4L, Highway 101 Carpinteria, Segment 4A. Approve and authorize the chair to execute amendment number 6 to the agreement with Ayers and Associates for services related to providing community relations and outreach services for construction of Highway 101 Carpinteria 4A with an increase of $161,000 for a revised total amount not to exceed $1,231,000 without a change in the period of performance ending June 30th, 2023.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or a motion?
I move that we approve that item.
Thank you.
Osborne
Second?
seconds.
Thank you very much, Director Osborne. Roll call?
Director Hart,
Yes.
Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Levanino,
Aye.
Eurig.
Aye.
Julian,
Aye.
Osborne,
Aye.
Patino, Perotti,
Aye.
Clark, absent, Murillo,
Aye.
and Chair Sierra.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you very much. All righty, Madam Clerk, would you please read item 5 into the record?
Thank you, Chair Sierra. Item 5 is Draft Measure A Program of Projects. Hold a public hearing to review and comment on Draft Measure A Program of Projects for fiscal years 2021-22 to 2025-26.
All righty. I believe Jackie Mata is presenting.
Thank you, Chair and Directors. My name is Jackie Mata, and I'm a transportation planner for SBCAG. Today, I will be presenting the Draft Measure A Program of Projects for the next 5 fiscal years. These are fiscal years 21-22 through 25-26. And the Program of Projects it shows how every dollar of Measure A funding will be spent by SBCAG, local agencies, and transit operators for the next 5 years. So the Program of Projects consists of the local and authority. So the local Program of Projects is developed by local agencies, and these are any local street and transportation improvements. And the authority Program of Projects, also called the regional Program of Projects, is developed by SBCAG and Santa Barbara MTD. And these are named projects identified in the Measure A investment plan. So during this time, we will have around 40.6 million available for allocation in fiscal year 21-22, and an estimated 207 million available over the 5-year period. So of that amount, 58% goes to local agencies as local pass-through, and the remaining 42% is used for regional projects in the investment plan. So in terms of local investment, as you can see from this pie chart, approximately 60% of the local pass-through funds are being utilized for streets and roads improvements. The second highest category is for alternative transportation investments, and the other major categories include safety and urban forestry, street tree program. One investment that's included in the regional program is for specialized transit. Approximately 2.1 million is going to be invested for specialized transit for our transit operators. An example of this is in the North County. This is Smooth, which is a great transit service for the elderly and disabled. Next. This slide shows a project that is from Cycle 3 of the Regional Bike Ped / Safe Routes to School program in the South Coast. This is from the city of Carpinteria, the Carpinteria Avenue Pedestrian Safety Improvements Project. So at this time, most projects in Cycle 4, which is the current cycle in the South Coast, are still in progress, but they are still included in the regional program of projects. And this is an example of a regional project included in the POP. This is Highway 166 safety and operational improvements, which includes adding passing lanes, turning lanes, wider shoulders, and enhanced enforcement. And then lastly, another investment is the US Highway 101 widening project, or the multimodal corridor project. This is one of our named projects on the authority program of projects. And so this is the great thing about Measure A, is that it has provided us with a match, and we have competed very well in competitive grants for SB1. And so this has helped us fund segments 4A through 4C. I also want to mention that the draft program of projects was presented to TTEC, the Technical Transportation Advisory Committee, earlier this month, and no comments were received. And today we are holding a public hearing for feedback, and then next month we will present the final program of projects to TTEC again, and then to your board for approval with allocations in July. And yeah, that concludes my presentation. So I hope this gave you a good overview of how we're using Measure A on the local and the regional level. I'd be happy to take any questions now.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Any questions for staff? I'm looking for hands raised. I don't see any. Anybody want to speak up with any questions? No? Is there any public comment on this item?
Chair Sierra received no public comment for item 5.
All righty. Board discussion?
Nope.
Director Nelson? Did you have any?
Nope, just make a motion to approve item 5.
Okay, well, this is a comment, review and comment only, so no actions required. Okay. Moving on to item 6. Will you please read item 6 into the
Madam
record?
Chair, if I may
Yes.
interrupt you.
Of course.
That is a public hearing, so if we can open up a public hearing and close it, that'd be great.
Terrific.
Thank you.
I am opening up the public hearing. Don't hear any comments from the public, so I am closing public hearing. Yes?
And Madam Chair, since there's
Yes.
no CARP residents here today to speak to at the improvements of Carpinteria Avenue, I looked at the accident data, and there really does seem to be a need here. So I just want to make sure that there's at least one comment on the record positive about this. And of course, all of you know the issues on 166. So I think these recommendations are sound.
Thank you very much for the comment, Director Williams. Appreciate that we do have something on the record. Thank you. Item 6.
Good morning, Chair Sierra and directors.
Wait, Michael,
Oh.
Hold on a second.
hold on a
Mike.
second. I need to read it. Thank you. Item 6, Regional Early Action Planning Grants Program. Receive a presentation from the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, staff on the local employment of regional early action planning grants.
Mr. Becker.
Yes, so again, good morning, Chair Sierra and directors. This morning, we've asked Paul Heirling of the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, or AMBAG, to provide a presentation on the Regional Early Action Planning Grants Program, or REAP for short. The program was a result of AB 101 and provides funding to accelerate the production of housing. The law grouped our region with our Central Coast partners, which is why Paul from Monterey is engaging with you today. $8 million was provided to the Central Coast region, with about $2.3 million coming to our Santa Barbara County region. AMBAG, and more specifically Paul, is the administrator for the Central Coast region. The board guiding the process includes elected officials from throughout the Central Coast region, and representing Santa Barbara County is Directors Patino, Hartman, and Julian. Paul will touch on the grant program as well as the best practices toolkit that was a required product of the law. This item is for information only and no action is required. And now I'll turn it over to Paul.
Hi, this is Paul Heirling, Senior Planner with the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments. Good morning, Chair and Directors. Mike really summed up what we'll be talking about today, the Regional Early Access Planning Grant Update. And so let's just go ahead and jump into it. So today I'll be talking about a little overview of the Regional Early Access Program. I will talk about the SBCAG REAP projects, the California Central Coast Housing Best Practices Toolkit, and next steps. So in a little background here, in September 2019, the housing trailer bill to the 2019-2020 state budget was approved, which authorized the Regional Early Access Planning Grant Program and made over $7.9 million available to the California Central Coast region. Why do they call it Regional Early Access Planning Grant? Good question. They should have just called it the Housing Planning Grant, but they made it available earlier than other funds in the budget, so they decided to focus on the fact that it was available early rather than the fact that it was a housing planning grant. So interesting decision making. You may be asking yourself, why is there a Central Coast region? So in the legislation establishing the REAP grant, AB 101, the state established a mega region. The mega region included AMBAG, SLOCOG, and SBCAG. So those constitute 5 counties: Santa Cruz, Monterey. So the grant program requires that funds be used for specific purposes, including allowing it to be sub-allocated to jurisdictions for planning projects to accelerate housing production, and also for use in RENA, which is primarily prepared by the COGS. So in January 2020, the working group that oversees the grant, a group of local electeds, appointed AMBAG to be the fiscal agent for the REAP program and to disperse the funding throughout the region. We were chosen just because we do a lot of grants, we do a lot of grant management, and I have a lot of background in grant management. I've been doing it for about 10 years now, so I've been able to sort of advise jurisdictions on how to frame their applications to make them as easy as possible to manage and report on, and as defensible to audit as possible if that ever arises. So in January 2020, we were appointed to be that fiscal agent. In April 2020, the working group approved an approach to equitably allocate funds to the Central Coast COGS based on population.
Can I interrupt you for a minute? We need to change it so the presentation is the highlighted screen on the Zoom meeting so they can see your presentation. Right now, they're just seeing your little icon. So I don't know how to change that. It's the county IT folks that need to have it highlighted on the presentation, not on Paul.
If you actually pin the CSTV TV screen, that will show up as your main screen.
Okay, so everybody on Zoom, please pin the CSB TV screen. Okay, so let's see if that works. So Paul, continue to talk.
Sure. So in April 2020, an approach to disperse funds to the Central Coast COGS was established based on population formula, in agreement between all participating COGS and representatives. Each of the COG boards have approved sub-allocating funds to their city and county jurisdictions. So when the state established the program, they didn't require that it be sub-allocated. But due to the nature of our region being really diverse and geographically stratified and separated, we decided to just sub-allocate the vast majority of the funds and give some small nominal portion to the COGS to update the RENA. So let's go to the next slide. There you go. So in summer 2020, SBCAG released the REAP sub-allocation applications to their member jurisdictions for just over $2.3 million in funding. And the purpose, again, is for accelerating housing production. Here's a list of eligible activities, but ultimately any type of activity with a strong nexus to accelerating housing production is eligible. And really the state goal for this program was to provide funding for what we all know is a previously unfunded mandate to implement RENA. So the state recently, woke up and smelled the coffee and said, geez, we have a a statewide housing crisis. Let's look at what's going on. And they said, oh, well, we haven't been funding COGs and jurisdictions to implement the required RHNA planning. So the REAP program was part of a constellation of programs that came out, around 2019, 2020, including SB2 grants and the LEAP program, Local Early Action Planning Grants, which is essentially a mirror of the REAP program. And they dispersed, a large tranche of funding to help jurisdictions and COGs really implement REAP. And that has gotten a really great response statewide. When jurisdictions have money to meet state mandates, they do above and beyond the minimum necessary to implement RHNA. And so we've seen that happen and have been really actually surprised at how strongly jurisdictions have taken up this mission to update their planning documents and codes to help implement RHNA. Next slide, please. So generally, here's just a summary of what each jurisdiction chose to do with their funding. Generally, all grant recipients chose to use the funding for the same major tasks: updating their housing elements and associated zoning updates. And apologies, the SBCAG projects, they actually did not do a housing element update or a zoning update because SBCAG does not have a housing element or zoning element. SBCAG used the funding for what it was intended for all COGs, is to help implement the RHNA update. So only a few jurisdictions chose to do ADU policy updates, and that's accessory dwelling unit for those who haven't heard that before. Most other jurisdictions have actually already finalized their ADU policies using recent rounds of SB2 and LEAP funding. So there was really minimal need to update ADU policies amongst many jurisdictions because it had already been funded or completed. About half of jurisdictions chose to also do other tasks, primarily permit streamlining processes, but in some cases, for example, infrastructure studies for the city of Solvang and development fee assessments, also for the city of Solvang. And Santa Maria did some annexations for additional housing, and we've seen some of the same type of annexations being funded in the AMBAG region to move some projects across the finish line and really get them started in building. So the funding has really been used to really put houses on the ground. It's been pretty impressive. Next slide. So as a condition of accepting REAP funding, the Central Coast region must identify housing best practices and strategies to promote increased supply of housing. As grant administrator, AMBAG prepared the Housing Best Practices Toolkit for the Central Coast region with input from jurisdictions and COGs. This toolkit can be found in your agenda packet as an attachment for item 6. The Best Practices and Strategies Toolkit presents a wide variety of housing policy tools that jurisdictions can use to identify approaches that may work well for their communities. So really, as part of the REAP funding, we wanted to just kind of give folks kind of a buffet of items to choose from. And really, this was targeted more at smaller cities and smaller counties that may have not had as much capacity or understanding of housing development processes to accelerate housing production or affordable housing. So it was really a technical assistance document that we wanted to make available. And I'd emphasize that this is only a resource, and jurisdictions are in no way required to conform to the toolkit. It provides more of a starting point for jurisdictions to determine how best to implement various housing practices in their communities. The outline of the best practices toolkit was brought to the overseeing group for the REAP program in April 2020 for review. It was sent to all COGs for review, and I'll discuss that a little bit more in the next slide. So here's the approach to composing the toolkit. And it's just this kind of a simplified flow chart. We started the toolkit by reviewing HCD guidance and other housing best practices studies. building on them and adjusting for the conditions of the Central Coast, which are generally less urban. So a lot of the housing best practices out there are for like urban folks, super high density development, 40-story towers, high density infill, which was, a little less appropriate for our area. We're more of a, up to medium density infill, medium density downtown max for our region. And so, we kind of took those and made them a little more appropriate for the Central Coast. We also gathered input from the Central Coast COGS jurisdictions to identify what practices have and haven't worked for them. So that was kind of part of the calculation. Based on that input, we prepared a toolbox of best practices for Central Coast jurisdictions. We did draft review with our partners, and then we finalized the toolkit by including that feedback. Next slide, please. The outline of the best practices housing toolkit is shown here. This is a focus toolkit, and the bulk of it is really in Chapter 2. The housing planning strategy section has over 30 best practices. I won't go through all of them because there's just so many, but I'll say that we customized it to the region and really kind of focused on that suburban semi-rural density kind of approach. And I can actually highlight a few of the ones that we included in the strategy. So we, for example, we included some approaches to implementing accessory dwelling units, including removing parking requirements. So when folks want to actually build an ADU in their backyard, they're not responsible for adding another parking spot on the parcel. And another strategy would be creating a path for permitting unpermitting ADUs. So as we all know, there's many kind of off the radar ADUs out there. And, maybe some of them are workable and not massive code violations. And that's a program that some jurisdictions have implemented to basically bring those into conformance and have, the city come in and look at them and say, look, can we approve these? Can we allow this? And, actually include it in the record. Other strategies, another interesting one is condominium conversion limits, which limits converting rentals to condominiums. It's more of an affordable housing approach to make sure that landlords don't take all their rentals, convert into condominiums because they can get a fortune for them and sell them off. So that it's kind of a strategy to help maintain affordable housing. And other kind of similar approaches include preserving mobile homes, which is a similar rationale. Making it more difficult to take a mobile home park, kick everybody out, build some fancy housing and charge a fortune for it. So these are just some options that we present to jurisdictions to consider, and they can kind of choose what they think is more appropriate to them. And it's sort of a buffet style of what folks want to do here. And if they have their own best practice strategies that aren't included here, of course they can proceed with those as well. So with that, I'm happy to take any comments or questions on either the REAP program or the best practices toolkit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Heirling. Is there any questions from the directors?
Yes, Chair Sierra, this is Director Hart.
Please.
I had a question about the allocation of funding. Could you help me understand the approach that was used to allocate the funds to the various local governments? Is it a formula process? Was it grant applications that were vetted? I don't see any pattern from the awards for those agencies.
Director Hart, Mike Becker here. Paul, I got this. From the mega region to each COG, so from the Central Coast to Santa Barbara County, that was based on population. And then within the Santa Barbara County region, we used the 5th cycle RENA numbers. So there was a minimum of 100,000, each jurisdiction got a minimum of $100,000, and then the rest was based on a formula using the allocations from the prior RENA cycle.
I see. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm.
All righty. Thank you. Director Nelson?
Yeah, this question's for Paul. I heard you say something about annexations. Could you go into that a little bit further, or did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, you did. Refunding can be used to fund annexation studies and annexation processes as long as it's planning only and doesn't actually include construction. And so some jurisdictions have chosen to take that route and use the funding for annexations, which is, I think, a great use for the funding. And that may be either the annexation planning itself or the EIR related to the annexation, which is also eligible.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. I know that one of my local jurisdictions might potentially be interested in that. The other, I would caution the strategy of preventing rentals from becoming condominiums as a good housing strategy. I think that's a real, entry level for home ownership. That's really important too, that we don't want to take off the table. And I think that kicking everybody out of a mobile home park, and at least our county, I believe we have an ordinance for that purpose, and we still would have land use control, and we have to approve something like that. So I would want to get away from that characterization as something where somebody's going to make a fortune. I think that actually creates opportunity. I think affordable housing is step one, but it is a continuum, right? And we want to get people eventually into home ownership and build some wealth for their family and some more security. And so I do actually think that that's something that should be encouraged and not discouraged as part of these conversations.
Thank you.
That was really, I'll just add, that was really more of an urban strategy that we saw for the most part, but we thought we'd include it in case any folks were interested, because it could be used in the Central Coast region. But it's just something I had never heard before, and we thought it was kind of interesting. So it was almost more of a matter of, wow, this is a neat idea, and just some food for thought.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
All righty. Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. No questions? Good ones from Director Hart and Nelson.
Madam Chair, I was just going to give the counterpoint to Director Nelson's point. I mean, I think if production of rental housing had been sustained, then I might agree. But, to give you an example, in the city of Santa Barbara, there was not a single apartment building approved or built in my lifetime, until the mark a couple of years ago. And so you can't not build any rental housing for 40 years without creating a supply that's so low that you really can't lose much more. And so, I think that our rental housing stock on the, is pretty precious. So I don't necessarily think that, even though, Paul designated that as a urban strategy, it is still something that needs to be talked about here too. Because if you lose a whole apartment building to condo conversion, you're in deep trouble in a market like ours. Now, to be fair to Mr. Nelson, this is only because of the neglect of production. So.
Yeah, but Director Sierra, if you don't mind, I appreciate what Supervisor Williams, or Director Williams is saying. He's absolutely right. It's an all the above strategy. I just don't want to demonize one over the other. I mean, I also know down in the South Coast, there's not a single family residence that's under $1 million right now on listing, and that's really troubling. And so getting an opportunity for people to get home ownership without having to purchase $1 million property is really important for all of us, and hopefully what we want to do is have steps. We want to be able to continue through that continuum of maybe they start off in an affordable housing situation, but eventually move towards home ownership and vacate that unit so somebody else can move in as they move up the economic ladder. And that's what we want for all of our residents. So I think we're saying the same thing. I think we're on the same page moving forward, and it's an all the above strategy.
Thank you very much. Director Patino?
Yes. I would agree with Director Nelson and Director Williams how important it is. We didn't have well, market rate apartments built here in Santa Maria for about 30 years until probably 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. And then we've had low income on the Depot Street in the past few months. And the need for housing at all levels is so important in Santa Maria. But, you know, with what they call best practices, when you can put IDUs in your backyard where you don't need any more than 4 feet setbacks, and you're taking out landscaping, you're taking out trees, and the negative impact this is having. So yes, we had to have an ordinance for this, but this ordinance also came down from the state, and they told us what we had to do. It's nothing that we did on our own. So initially, when we passed the ordinance on the dwelling units, we said that if you resided in the new dwelling unit in the back, that you had to have some relationship to the owner in the primary house. And so the state took that away from us. So it's not like we're doing it because we want to, we're doing it because we have to. Years ago, and I can't even remember how many years ago, we did pass an ordinance in Santa Maria to protect mobile home park owners so that they could not be converted to condos. And we saw that need a long time ago, because that fills a whole new level of housing for people, low income housing. A lot of times seniors decide they want to downsize, they move into mobile home parks, and we felt the necessity to protect them also. So the negative impact, though, on the dwelling units that has on our streets, because you don't have to have any parking, our streets are bumper to bumper parking at night. It impacts negatively the sewers, the garbage, as I said, the parking, the water. So to me, it's had a real negative impact. It's not like you're planning anything. It's sort of like that Monopoly game when you buy all those houses and you plunk them down on Park Avenue. So I just wanted to let you know, these are called best practices, but I just think that's a misnomer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any hands raised. Are there any other questions for staff?
This is
If
Paul.
not, go ahead.
If I can just add to Director Patima's comment, I agree. There is we hear a lot of frustration amongst planning directors about how the state is is pushing for additional housing and allowing parking requirements to go so low that they can't manage their parking now, which is really interesting. So, you know, I agree, and we understand that there is a kind of a double-edged sword factor to it, and this is something that's just kind of arisen recently to everyone's attention. And I think if it gets enough play, the state will address it at some point. But you know, they really did kind of, in housing and ADU policy, take an approach that was a little bit over focused on one area and really didn't consider, I guess, the impacts that it may have on parking. So I think that's a really good point, and I just want to thank you for that comment.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
Chair Sierra, we received no public comment, and I see no attendees wishing to speak.
Okay, so no further discussion.
Chair
Mr.
Sierra,
Heirling?
if I could,
please.
This is Mike again. I just want to jump in and number one, thank Paul. Administering the REAP program was a much bigger task than I think anybody had envisioned getting into it. I'm glad that it's with AMBAG and not with us. They are doing a lot of heavy lifting, and I appreciate that. And also, in the past, the SBCAG, going through the RENA cycles, we issue allocations of housing units to the jurisdictions and say, okay, now you have to plan to accommodate them. With the REAP program, and also, like Paul mentioned, there was a LEAP program that did not involve SBCAG. It's essentially the state's giving them money now to say, okay, here's your allocation and here's some financial support to help you plan to accommodate it. And we recently learned with the governor's draft May revised that we may be looking at another REAP-like program for implementing our sustainable community strategy. So we look forward to seeing where that goes and potentially engaging with you further on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate the presentation and the discussion. Yeah, it's really interesting. Madam Clerk, presentation only, no action required. Madam Clerk, will you please read item 7 into the record?
Thank you, Chair Sierra. Item 7 is the Highway 101 project update. Receive a presentation on the Highway 101 Carpinteria to Santa Barbara project construction and pre-construction activities.
Ms. Kern?
Chair Sierra and Directors Fred Luna giving the presentation.
Thank you, Fred.
Okay. Can you guys see that up? Okay, we're trying to control my mic here. We're excited to give an update on Highway 101 and the Highway 101 corridor. We have some 3 exciting new points of information we'd like to share with the board today. First of all, and you probably are already aware, the Linden Casitas construction project is finished. The landscaping has also been installed, and we have just some slides to show and some important news on that. We also wanted to provide the board with an update on the construction of the funded segments A, B, and C, and then also discuss the remaining work that's been underway by the project team for the remaining segments in the corridor. So starting in the south, what we called Phase 3, the Linden Casitas passes interchanges in the city of Carpinteria. We did have a celebration event shown on the photo at the bottom back last summer, and we were able to celebrate the substantial completion of that project. And then we went into the landscaping phase. And the project was contracted, closed out. That means all the final punch list items and items were taken care of, working with the city of Carpinteria to make sure that the contractor had completed their work. And then now Caltrans has taken over the maintenance and responsibility for that area. Like I mentioned before, we went into the landscaping phase, and that was just completed or is being completed this month. That's some minor landscaping shown in the photo there, but if you've driven through the area, there's more substantial landscaping, trees and vines on the walls. And most importantly, I think in one of the innovative ideas was the planted landscape across the Casitas Pass Bridge, which was an innovative idea. And we wanted to bring to the board's attention that the project has been nominated and has been determined to be a finalist for the California Transportation Foundation Awards. So we'll find out next week whether it is successful in that endeavor. I want to thank Caltrans for preparing that application and submitting that. So this slide here gives us a summary of the work that's been done in the corridor on the funded segments. As you recall, a few years back, we had a celebration event. We had gotten over $180 million in Senate Bill 1 funding, coupled with funding from Caltrans for the shop to fund and Measure A to fund the first 3 segments, or about 7 miles on Highway 101. And so in the italic and bold there, you can really see the progress that we've made on that. We've delivered on all those areas and are completed. Construction has started, obviously, in segments 4A and 4C, and I'll show some photos of the progress made on that. And then right in the middle there, we have some exciting news to share. Like on Monday, you've received an invitation that we're going to be celebrating the start of construction on the remaining funded segment 4B. On the Sunday night, June 6th, the work will commence, and so within a couple weeks of the celebration event, we'll be starting work. And then over the next 2 to 3 years, work will be completed in that section of the corridor, and we'll have the 7 miles done. So this is a cover of what you'll see on the construction brochure that will be mailed to the public this week, in fact, tomorrow, I believe, and then we'll be handing them out on Monday, showing and highlighting the Padaro interchange. So that structure at Santa Claus Lane and South Padaro will be entirely replaced, and you can see the different elements here that have been identified, the iconic timber railing that's been used throughout the corridor, the open span structure, the lighting to improve pedestrian access in this area, and then, of course, the bikeways. We're happy to be able to share that information on Monday. And in fact, this is kind of more information that you probably saw. We'll be sharing information about the multimodal corridor with our local, federal, and state officials on that day. So I'm going to get into a little bit about the construction work in the corridor. And so this is a kind of a fold-out section for the that's in the construction brochure we'll be releasing. It shows all the progress work that's going on in segments A, B, and C. And I'm not going to go into all the details. It just is color-coded, and I think this type of format has been proved useful for the public. They can see what work is being done in which year, and so now they can see it across all three segments. It's like what work is being done in 2021 in all those three segments. And if you recall, we do have one single contractor that is working on all of these segments as a result of Caltrans and SBCAG's efforts through the corridor management general contractor approach. Granite Construction is planning this, so we're looking to seamlessly, work on all the traffic control and all that, and save any type of temporary work, maybe just doing the ultimate approaches when we can. So I have a few slides to show work on Highway 101 Carpinteria. This part of the project includes bridge replacements at Santa Monica and Franklin Creek. Of course, the addition of an HOV lane or carpool lane. And then it has improvements at the off-ramps and ramps at Santa Monica Road, Carpinteria Avenue, and Reynolds Avenue. And there's check marks by those that are already completed. So Carp Avenue off-ramp has been completed, and we've already received a number of different positive feedback from that off-ramp realignment, because it provides a less fast deceleration for people to get into the local street. Reynolds Avenue has been completed. Sound walls are underway. A couple have been completed out of the 6 that are proposed, and other intersection improvements. Of note, there's a separate project that will be done at the intersection of Santa Monica and Villarreal, and that is intended to start around the late summer, early fall this year. And so this is just a kind of a timeline of different work that's going on in the area. You can see from the left the work on the structures at Franklin and Santa Monica Creek, and the bridge deck there in the middle, and some of the railing. So we're using that timber railing again for those creek crossings. And then this shows some of the work on the left there. That was the work at the Reynolds Avenue off-ramp, and when that was completed a couple months ago. So that had to be closed for a while, working with the businesses and the local community to make sure that opened on time. In fact, I believe it opened a few days early. And then on the right there, you see the approach for the continuously reinforced concrete pavement. So pouring it in sections, putting the form boards out there with all the steel, and laying the concrete for that section of pavement. Soundwall works, I mentioned there were 6 proposed in segment 4A, so those have been going on. I believe 2 of them have been completed along the southbound side of 101, and traffic was shifted recently, so you can see most of the work now is occurring on the northbound side near Santa Monica and Villarreal intersection and up through the end of the corridor. So we're going to move up to the Summerlin segment, and what you see here is the Evans Avenue undercrossing, the rendering that was proposed and approved for that bridge widening project and enhancement of that structure. Again, there's 2 major structural features in the Summerlin segment. The Evans Avenue structure that I just showed, and then the Sheffield Drive interchange reconstruction, where we're taking the old left-hand ramps and moving them over to the right more conventionally. And there's been quite a bit of work since work started in November of last year. They've in fact poured the first stage of construction in the entire median there for the Sheffield, and they've released the false work. What that means is they've taken off the form boards, and you can really see that in integral concrete color if you drive by that was chosen through the design review boards. Improvements to the freeway ramps at Evans, Ortega, and Wallace, those are still forthcoming. The Sheffield ramps have been closed and will be closed throughout the construction just to expedite construction, but others will be shorter durations in the community of Summerlin. And then there's 2 sound walls that haven't yet started yet, but will be forthcoming. And the undercrossing at Evans, like I mentioned before, is an important access point for the community of Summerlin. So that will be enhanced with lighting, sidewalks, bike lanes, and other design elements with the community identifier that I showed in the rendering before. So this shows some of the work that's going on at Sheffield. In that middle photo, you can kind of get a sense of the color of the concrete that was chosen, that tan color that was selected by the design review boards, and the structural work that's going on. And this is some more progress here of the work underneath the Sheffield at Evans, where they're pouring. Since this is not a full replacement, they're widening in the middle. So there's 2 separate bridges there. They're widening in the middle. You can see the 2 new columns in that center photo. And then they'll pour the deck, and they've already finished that. And then that will allow the ample room for the new HOV lane. And then in the community of Summerlin, the median is going to be widened. And so this area, this photo shows that where they've removed the existing median, railing, vegetation, and then where they're going to pour the concrete. And then just recently, they finished completing some of that work. So you can, if you drive through that area, you can see that the concrete paving has been poured in that area. And so now we're going to get to the next project, and this will fulfill the first 3 segments, the Padaro segment. And so this is, you've seen this photo that I just showed, the rendering there. One of the other things we're going to celebrate on Monday is the Blue Star Memorial and its relation to the Memorial Oaks. And so we'll be an unveiling of the Blue Star Memorial sign on Monday. And the whole project plans to restore 108 memorial oak trees in remembrance of World War I veterans from this area. Overall, the project has similar features as I just explained on the other 2 segments. In addition to the carpool lane, there's creek bridge reconstruction and replacement at Toro and Arroyo Parita Creek. That South Padaro Santa Claus Lane undercrossing is being entirely replaced, and the ramps are being improved. The North Padaro interchange, the ramps are just being improved, but the structure itself will remain. And then there's 3 new sound walls in the segment. And we'll have an opportunity on Monday to again talk about our multimodal corridor approach, and that has proven successful in us getting funding in the initial slug of money, and we look forward to sharing our plan forward. These are some of the projects that we're working on in the corridor that continue, and we'll highlight some of them on Monday, including the Santa Claus Lane Bikeway Project, the Santa Claus Lane Streetscape in partnership with the County of Santa Barbara. But there's also some other projects like coastal access improvements on Padaro Lane. I mentioned the Santa Monica Via Real intersection project, which will improve that intersection and traffic circulation in the city of Carpinteria. And then coastal access improvements in the community of Summerlin, both to the east and to the west. So now I'm going to jump ahead and kind of give some indication of what progress we've been making as a team on the remaining segments to the north, the Montecito and Santa Barbara segments. So you can see here, this map shows both of those segments. It's around the remaining 2.5 to 3 miles of the corridor, starting on the south at where the 4C segment ends, just north of the Sheffield interchange. You can see in 4D, there's quite a bit of work. The 3 creek crossing bridges at Oak, Romero, and San Isidro, some sound walls, and ramp improvements, and the HOV lanes. And then in 4E, we have sound walls, the major reconstruction of the Cabrillo interchange, which includes restoring that southbound on-ramp at Cabrillo that'll provide that additional access for southbound traffic, and coordination on local improvements. So you can see those, some of the original parallel projects that the board defined several years ago are in this area of the corridor, including the Cabrillo underpass, the Olive Mill and San Isidro intersection or roundabout improvements. Speaking of the Olive Mill and San Isidro roundabouts, earlier on your agenda, you approved a contract to commence work on the detailed design of that. We've been working closely with the city of Santa Barbara and the county of Santa Barbara to get those projects through the environmental and coastal permitting. And late last fall, there were some appeal processes that had to be gone through, but that appeal process has been exhausted, as I explained in the staff report. There was a hearing at the California Coastal Commission in April. So they upheld the local decision-making authority that denied the appeal. And so we're ready to move forward with those projects. And so now we're in a transition stage, trying to coordinate the work of the San Isidro and the Olive Mill roundabouts with the 101 project, and really looking at the best way to effectively implement improvements in that area. And so SBCAG went through a procurement process to retain a consultant, and we're going to get them on board. And we're all excited to have the Mark Thomas team back on board because they're also doing the design. So that will really make a very cohesive approach to Highway 101 and how we plan those improvements. So we have some exciting news to share also about what our plan is for implementing the Highway 101 improvements in this part of the corridor. We were notified a few months ago by Caltrans that there was some additional money that they had available through their SHOP program to lend itself to this part of the corridor. So staff working with Caltrans looked at various options, and we came up with an idea to try to fund a portion of the 4D segment in conjunction with the work at the roundabouts at Olive Mill and San Isidro to really present a really cohesive traffic management approach, and it will avoid some of the challenges we were looking at as maybe having multiple ramp closures or a lot of diverted traffic in that area if we were going to take on the whole D&E segment at once. And so we really feel that this is a sound approach, and we had $25 million of new money from Caltrans. They had some existing SHOP money that they were able to advance, so we're really appreciative of the work that was done by the Caltrans team on that. And then measure money that SBCAG had already programmed in this part of the corridor is being added to that to fund what is approximately about a $50 million segment that includes auxiliary lanes, which are those safety improvement lanes between Olive Mill and San Isidro, sound walls, the adding of the HOV lane, the new pavement in there, and then we'll be coordinating that directly with the work with the San Isidro and Olive Mill roundabouts to really manage traffic and be able to present that as a kind of a unified approach when we go out to the public. So with that, I just always want to point people back to our SB Road site. That'll be updated significantly because there's been quite a bit of work that's going on. We'll have new information on segment 4B. We'll have new information on the work that's being done in the north part of the corridor in segments 4D and E. And so if you want to get any of that information, it's always there, and those maps are there, so those are very useful. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Fred. My goodness. That's an awful lot of work. It's really, really impressive. Is there any question? Are there any questions for Fred?
Chair Sierra, this is Director Hart.
Please, Director Hart.
I agree with Chair Sierra. The great presentation, Mr. Luna, really clear and comprehensive, and it's extraordinary all the work that's going on. One just simple question I had is, how soon do you think the new carpool lanes in the Carpinteria area will be able to open up? Is that going to require the completion of that whole segment before they can open, or will they be able to open in phases as they're constructed?
So in the Carpinteria segment will be completed in the end of August of 2022. Mm-hmm. And so We've had initial discussions with Caltrans about the process to open those and restrike those, with other work going on in the area. At this point in time, I don't think we see any major issues with extending and adding on the additional, 2.5 miles through Carpinteria, added on to what's already there from the Muscle Shoals to Carpinteria in the northbound direction. And then we'll look at the southbound as well. So.
Okay, good. So in 22, when the project's done.
Yeah. That's the deadline for that project.
Thank you.
Director Uhrig? Did you have a comment or question?
Director Yerg, your mic is muted.
Sorry.
There you go.
Yes, I did. Sorry about that, Chair Sierra. Being that we are one of the first in the county to implement some type of water conservation for our little area where we're at, because we're hurting for that, what are the plans for watering all of the new vegetation that is being planned for all of this stuff? Is there anything on board for using recycled or gray water for that? And then is there any plans for any of the creeks that are along this new 7-mile stretch? For example, San Ysidro and some of the other ones that had flooded, for any water recaptured during the rainy season to be able to be utilized for watering or for anything else?
Director Uhrig, through the chair. Great question. We get that a lot as we're about the reclaimed water and how we're going to approach the sustained landscaping and maintenance for in the corridor. We really have two objectives that we're trying to meet there, is adding back more plant material into the corridor after we're done and trying to get that in place. But then we always get the question about long-term maintenance. And so we have an opportunity with this project to upgrade all our irrigation and controlling systems. That's going to be state-of-the-art, that is weather-based, and that in conjunction with the drought-tolerant planting makes it at least more efficient, even during some drought seasons that we would go through. And naturally, it happens in California. And so that's been our approach on that. There is a sustained maintenance period that's after planting, that's usually 3 years to 5 years on that, just to make sure that the plants survive and are replaced. And then regarding the recapture of water, there are no plans that I'm aware of that we have to, as the water's flowing out to the sea, there's the capacity to contain it and treat it, I think is probably something that's beyond the scope of the project.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. Any other questions, comments? Is there any public comment?
Chair Sarah, we received no public comment for this item.
All righty. Well, thank you very, very much for the presentation. It's amazing how many balls you can juggle at the same time. Really impressive. This is a presentation, no action required. So if I could get our clerk to please read item 7 into the record. Item 8, excuse me. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Sierra. Item 8.
Madam Chair, I thought of one thing that I shouldn't let go before Fred leaves. So
Certainly, Director Williams.
Fred, can we stay on the question in 4D of whether there are opportunities for enlarging the current culverts? This is something that's very much on the mind of the community after the debris flow, and I've mentioned it to Caltrans, but I just want to, understand if there's opportunities and make sure that I alert you to hopefully look for opportunities, because enlarging the culverts obviously is something after the experiences, the debris flow, that is on the mind of the community.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Director Williams, through the chair. So the notion of how we're improving drainage is in the corridor, we have an opportunity here in several ways. Both the major structures at the creeks are being improved at 101. So they're being both widened and lengthened. But the issue that you have is that in some of these, in most of these creeks, you have either upstream or downstream constraints. So, but the projects or the bridges are being built to accommodate that future capacity. And so, so that if in the case of like Oak Creek, if there's a downstream constraint, the 101 bridge will have these temporary walls put in that will keep the capacity at, to match the downstream capacity at the railroad and the county roads. But when those would be upgraded in the future, then Caltrans and then just come in and remove those walls, and that will be planning for the future capacity. But other, on-system drainage, regular drainage from the roadway, you have some sections that are gather data. That's all being upgraded. There's opportunities to add new culverts there and improve the drainage and carry it off the roadway as fast as possible to improve safety.
Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 8.
Thank you, Chair Sierra. Item 8, HR 133 funding for Highway 101 high occupancy vehicle project and local agency projects. 8A, receive a presentation on availability of federal transportation funding. 8B, approve programming of $4.7 million in federal HR 133 funding to Highway 101, Santa Barbara and Montecito segments for submittal and approval by California Transportation Commission, and program of $2.04 million in surface transportation program reserve funding for local agencies using the local surface transportation program formula.
Thank you very much. Sarkis Kalchek.
Thank you, Chair Sierra. Good morning, directors. Nice to see you all. The first part is going to cover this new funding that we're receiving from the federal government as a one-time infusion, and then how to program the funding. And so it nicely fits in with Mr. Luna's presentation on the 101. But to start, in December of last year, President Trump signed the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act of 2021. We like to add new acronyms to our toolbox. So that provided the Federal Highway Administration with $10 billion that then could be allocated to states for highway purposes. So that $10 billion means $911 million for California. So then the $911 million in California means it's split 60% to the state and 40% to the regions. The 60% proposed, and this is based on a historical split going back to a federal, couple federal measures. The state plans on using that money for the SHOP, which Mr. Luna mentioned, and for the interregional program of the STIP. So we'll continue to monitor and see how that could potentially benefit our region, but it looks like we're seeing the benefits of the SHOP. For the regions, from that 40%, what that means for our region is that based on a couple formulas that the CTC, which is administering the programs, they use two existing formulas, the Surface Transportation Program and the State Transportation Improvement Program regional formula. They use those formulas to address equity expressed throughout the process of the workshops. For us, that means $2 million or $4.7 million total for our region, which is great news, one-time money. $2 million through the Surface Transportation Program formula, and then $2.7 million through the regional STIP formula. These funds must be submitted to the CTC for approval and allocation. So there's a little bit of administration with the funding. Given the status of the new 4D North project, and to make sure that we are saving as much Measure A money for our Cycle 3 applications coming up through Senate Bill 1, staff is recommending with support from TTAC that we program these funds to the 4D North project, and then that means the Measure A project that we were going to have will slide onto the remaining D and E segments, so we could save that for cycle 3 to be more competitive. And then in the spirit of partnership and realizing that our local agencies have also experienced declines in revenue because of COVID, we are then recommending that the $2 million that we were getting through the STP formula be distributed to our local partners using the existing formula, population-based formula. It'll go to them, and then that way we're reducing any administrative burden on our local agencies by having to submit the application. So we're programming the money onto the 101 project and then releasing Highway 101 reserve funding to our local partners. And so we feel as though that this recommendation is sort of a win-win-win on multiple levels. And so we did present this to the Technical Transportation Advisory Committee a couple weeks ago, and they also supported staff recommendation.
Madam Chair, may I add something to that staff report?
Please.
I just want to emphasize that SARCAS came up with a solution. The allocation of the STP dollars that we have in reserve are state-only dollars. So this reduces the bureaucratic process that the local jurisdictions would have to go through. If we were to give them the actual STP, actual dollars, they would be considered federal, and they would have to have a NEPA clearance, as well as going through the Federal Transportation Improvement Program, as well as going through the California Transportation Commission. So the bureaucracy there is, we're trying to eliminate that and make it easy for the jurisdictions. So by giving them the state-only dollars, it makes it a lot easier for them to spend. And so once this action is approved by the board, we can move on this like tomorrow. So the local jurisdictions are really excited about that portion of this action that we're recommending to you. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the directors? Let's see. I don't see anybody. Okay. Any public comment on this item?
Chair Sierra, yes, we received one public comment for item 8. It is from Mr. Tom Becker. His comment is, no federal funding should be approved for transportation projects that fail to reduce vehicle miles traveled, or in this case, induce increases in vehicles miles traveled.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment?
Chair Sierra, we have no other public comment.
I am closing public comment, bringing it back to the board for discussion and perhaps a motion. Seeing no hands raised, could I get a
Director
motion?
Hartman moves staff recommendation.
Patino,
Thank you.
second that.
Thank you very much. Hartman and Patino. Roll call, please.
Director Williams,
Aye.
Hart,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Nelson, Lavanino,
Aye.
Eurig,
Aye.
Julian,
Aye.
Osborne,
Aye.
Patino,
Aye.
Parodi,
Aye.
Mario,
Aye.
and Chair Sierra.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much. Great creative thinking. Moving on to our 1-minute reports. This is your opportunity. Tell us what's going on in your cities and your jurisdictions. What exciting things are happening in Santa Barbara County? Nothing. Nobody? Come on, Mayor Murillo. Certainly you've got something.
Thank you. Yes, we have a lot going on. I appreciate this opportunity to let you know. Our public works budget, we're in the middle of budget season here at the city of Santa Barbara. And our public works budget, we're reviewing it May 26th. Drilling down to city streets downtown, the 0 block of West Victoria is open to eastbound traffic this week in preparation for the reopening of the Ensemble Theater for student camps, and outdoor dining is still in operation. And that was a tricky area for us with restaurants and a big theater complex there. So good news for everybody that performing arts are coming back, and also educational program for youth. Yay for everything. Today is the deadline for people to apply for our State Street Advisory Committee. We've made some big changes to State Street, closing it to car traffic, and we're putting together a group to advise us on the future of State Street, which runs obviously through our downtown. Also downtown at the intersection of Delavina and Sola Street, we have a lighting project that's under construction, and it should be complete in the next 14 weeks. And this is a Vision Zero project. There's been a lot of collisions at night there, and so we are creating a high visibility crossing, and really glad to create some safety. People really get going fast. Delavina's on a slope downward, and they just really get whipping through there. So thanks for letting me make a report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Director Parodi?
Chair Sierra, this is Director Parodi.
Wonderful.
Thank
Please.
you. I would like to let you know that the City of Goleta is the recipient of an award of excellence from the American Planning Association, California Central Coast Section. We received the award, Hard-Won Victory Award, for our new zoning ordinance. So that was a great surprise. Also, just let everybody know that the City of Goleta's Community State of the City will air on Thursday, May 27th at 7 o'clock. And we're going to be featuring local entertainment from our youth. Of course, I will have a lot to say. And each one of our council members will speak, as well as our city manager. And we are also, something that was very well received when we were doing live Community State of the Cities, our directors of each department will answer questions from the public. We are also hosting a virtual workshop on districting process, and that's on June 7th at 6 p.m. And that's the end of report.
Thank you very much.
Chair Sierra.
Director Patino?
Nope.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we have
Go ahead.
hired, okay, we have a brand new fire chief, Chief Tuggle. And he was interim chief when our chief champion resigned and is still in the area. But we also have a couple of our high school kids that are possibly heading to the Olympics. So in a couple of weeks, they will be going to Nebraska for more training. And so that's going to be really exciting to see how well they do. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Director Clark has joined us. Al, do you have any 1-minute reports for Carpinteria?
Sure. Thank you very much. Sorry, I slept through the first part of the meeting. The Caltrans was very responsive to a problem with the construction project down here, and I want to thank them for what they're doing. I don't want to go into the details because it's a little complex, but they really solved what could be a serious traffic problem, and I want to give them all my thanks for that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anybody else? I could call you all out one by one, but if anybody's got something.
Director Sierra, this is Dos Williams. This has happened a couple months ago, but I think it's really relevant. The Board of Supervisors is really, and the effort is led by our HR department, really relooking at telework. Really the opportunities presented when part of your organization is already working as opposed to waiting till they all come back to work and then encouraging people to telework. We're trying not to miss that opportunity. And in the past, really, some of our telework opportunities, have been limited by maybe some of middle management being really reluctant, worried about productivity. And so one of the real things that is an interesting turnaround during COVID is the polled attitudes of employees, including management, middle management, it has kind of turned around in their opinion of how productive people are in telework, that the confidence and productivity in telework has risen, maybe because people have had to implement it, had to make it work, and seeing how it can work. So, just mention it because all of you have organizations, and of course, I'm sure our HR department would be happy to share any of the observations or data or methodology they are using with your city staffs.
Thank you very much. Director Uhrig.
Yes, thank you, Chair Sierra. Just a couple of quick things here. We've hired a new code enforcement officer in Solvang. Was our former police chief that's retired and came back. So that we're looking forward to trying to get some of the code enforcement issues straightened out that we've been kind of stringing along because we haven't had anybody to actually go out and try to get any type of compliance from their residents and the businesses. We've also opened up a couple of new positions as we've tried to gear up for hopefully everyone for June 15 being able to be open. Including our city offices. We've added or trying to add a new recreation assistant. One will be, he's our former director, and I believe he's actually helping the city of Buellton as well on a part-time basis. So he'll be coming on a part-time basis. And then a full-time maintenance from one of our employees that was terminated last year because of COVID. We're also in the market for a city clerk, full-time city clerk. We are very looking forward to June 15 opening up. And so on the 18th, that Friday, we'll be having our first movies in the park, of which I will be hosting along with our Jenny from our Parks and Rec. And then the following Wednesday, we start our concerts in the park. And I'm fortunate enough, I'll be playing with my sons for our first concerts in the parks starting on Wednesdays, and that'll be going every Wednesday through the summer. And then also looking forward to more special events coming on board, including our annual car show, the Wheels and Windmills, at the end of August, as well as the Fall Festival. And I think that's about all I have for Solvang right now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I look forward to hearing you and your sons playing. I don't see anybody else. Nobody else? All righty, then I'm moving on to the Executive Director's Report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson. Last week, Fred already mentioned this, but I'll mention it again because I think it's pretty dang exciting. Last week, the CTC allocated the funding for 4B, and I was able to speak on our behalf. And with the benefit of the construction manager and general contractor, we're able to start construction, so it's like within a week of making the allocation. And so that really never happens in normal projects. So I just think it's so exciting how quickly we can turn around once the money is made available. So you've all been invited to celebrate the groundbreaking on May 24th, and I know some of you can't make it, and we're going to miss you. We're going to have a nice bike ride along the coast there with our members that are coming to that event. So thank you for those who are coming. As the Central Coast Coalition, we met with our new Transportation Commissioner, Grisby, this past Monday. This is a great opportunity for us to introduce the Central Coast to him, as well as all the multimodal project priorities that we have throughout the Central Coast. I think we've been doing this for so long that we think everybody else is doing it, but we need to make sure that we're highlighting that we're definitely a multimodal region, and we support what's going on statewide now, that's being proposed statewide. And on that note, the governor revealed his May revised budget. I think most of us were watching that press conference in awe of how well he can speak for so long. I think he was on for an hour and a half to 2 hours, just nonstop talking about the budget. And it included several exciting opportunities in all the different sectors, including transportation and broadband that we've talked about here. So we are actively looking at those opportunities, and hopefully they will stick to the adoption of the budget, and we'll present information as we get closer to those closer to the adopted budget of those opportunities and see which ones we can help the jurisdictions take advantage of. And last but not least, I want to celebrate this. We received no appeals on our regional housing needs assessment process, so that's great news. Our plan is to have the plan before the board for adoption in July, and that will start the 18-month clock for the housing element update. So then everybody needs to get their housing elements to accommodate those numbers, and with the REAP funding, hopefully that will help implement those things as we move forward. But overall, I think we're doing the jurisdictions are doing a great job in allocating the money the new money we're getting, and implementing the housing information that we're giving them. So the relationships are getting even stronger because of these projects that we've been working on the past few months. So I want to thank them for their support and efforts. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Caltrans report, Mr. Eads.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today. So I have a few items for you. One is I just wanted to just highlight the exciting progress on the Santa Barbara 101 corridor. Super rewarding to see so many complexities involved in the funding and the permitting and the programming and constructing these projects, and the team is just continuing to knock it out of the park. And like Ms. Kern mentioned, the CMGC, the benefits of being able to not only get it out to construction quickly or get it into construction quickly, but also just the inherent coordination that's occurring between each individual adjacent project segment is a really key benefit of CMGC. So really exciting to see the progress continuing there. Also wanted to highlight a project on Route 1 up in the North County. Highway 1 from Vandenberg Space Force Base entrance to the intersection of State Route 166 in Guadalupe is now underway. The project will include pavement repairs, resurfacing, installation of rumble strips, striping, lighting at the intersection of Black Road, and a new guardrail at the railroad overcrossing and the Solomon Creek Bridge. First phase of construction will take place near Orcut and between there and 166, and it'll be Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Fridays. And then there will be some overnight work between Solomon Road and Orcut and State Route 166 Sunday through Friday mornings, and that there will be one-lane traffic control at times, and delay should not exceed 10 minutes. So just some highlight of upcoming construction there. And we're expecting to complete that by October or in October. And then I do have some news related to item 4B in today's agenda, which was authorizing SBCAG staff to continue work or to begin work on a federal Rebuilding America Infrastructure and Sustainability and Equity, or RAISE, discretionary grant. And I just wanted to highlight that Caltrans has been considering, and typically does, on funding categories that Caltrans can also apply for, like this, considering a process of internal candidates and going through a vetting process to determine which ones could move forward for Caltrans submittals. And under this program, Caltrans is limited to 3 projects statewide. And so there were a number of projects that were submitted. And out of that process, we just found out yesterday that Caltrans has been given the thumbs up to have one of the 3 candidates be the Cabrillo Bike and Ped and Railroad Replacement Project, which we oftentimes discuss as the Cabrillo Railroad Replacement Project. So super exciting that we can partner with SBCAG on this. So it'll be a joint application between SBCAG and Caltrans. We'll be working closely with SBCAG staff. And no guarantee that we'll receive the funding, but I think it increases our chances of being a joint submittal between Caltrans and SBCAG, and the fact that it's only one of 3 projects that Caltrans will be submitting, I think that puts us in good standing, and it keeps awareness statewide of this important project. So great news to share there. Last thing I'll say along those lines is that there will be some additional submittal deadlines, because we'll have to work with headquarters for some advancing some of the application drafts and making sure that there's some review of that, since it is one of the 3, but confident we can work with SBCAG staff on that, and we've got a great team, and I'm sure it won't be a problem. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Eads? I don't
Director
see
Hartman,
Directors.
Please, Director Hartman.
Thank you. 3 brief comments or questions. The first, I just wanted to thank Caltrans. They held another community meeting, one of a series in Los Alamos, about the bridge replacement. And what was so impressive was, as we were talking about various on-ramps and off-ramps, people could just bring up the image and we could look at it. It wasn't part of any presentation, but the technical support for the public meeting was really notable, and just wanted to comment on that. I have 2 things that constituents have asked. The first is that, and this may be for next meeting, but the first is whether Caltrans keeps a list of interested parties for particularly the Gaviota Coast area, and whether projects that are being proposed, EIRs that are being done, if people could be automatically noticed if they are on your list of interested parties. And the second item is whether we could get a presentation or something next meeting about the wildlife corridor study and the progress, or where Caltrans is on that.
Right.
Okay, through the chair, if I could answer that to Director Hartman. So I'll check into that. I'll check with our environmental folks and get back to you, Director Hartman, on that. We oftentimes at least have an awareness of local constituents or constituent groups that are interested. So I'll follow up on that. And then I'm happy to come back with wildlife corridor connectivity efforts if that's something the board would like a presentation on.
Thank you. Was there anybody else? Ms. Director Clark, did you raise your hand?
Director Sierra, or Chair Sierra, the Director Urick. I just had a quick question.
Director Urick, I'll listen to you. Director Clark, if you want to talk, you're going to have to unmute, and I'll take you right after Director Urick.
Thank you, Chair Sierra. I was just wanting to comment on the Cold Spring Bridge project that you have on Highway 154, and how much longer is that project continuing? I did want to comment that it seemed the construction that was going on, or whatever the project entailed, the road closures were kept to a minimum, and I really appreciated that. So that was just one question regarding how much longer the construction team will still be gathering around the bridge area. And then how much longer is the project on the 101-246, where the off ramps have been closed? I've been having a number of constituents asking about that. I don't know if maybe that's already completed, but that was one other question. And then lastly, that same area there in Buellton, where the trees went down on 246 there, right by Thumbelina. What's the status of that area there? Thank you.
Okay, Director Urick, through the chair, if that's okay. I may need some help on one of those. I was trying to look up something on the Cold Springs Bridge as you were talking there, so I may have missed one. I'm showing that on the Cold Springs Bridge maintenance inspection, work is ongoing, and I'm showing construction. This is in your board update, actually, in the packet. Construction through the summer of 2024. So it's a lengthy effort. There's some work, a lot of work. Most of the work actually is happening underneath the structure itself. So we're going to do everything we can to minimize impacts to those, to the traveling public. But work will be continuing on and, mostly underneath the bridge. With respect to the second one, maybe you're going to have to remind me if you could, the project or the effort.
Yes, that would be 101-246. In the evening, it seems that all the off ramps have not been in use, and maybe it's been completed. I actually haven't been out that way, but I had a few residents ask me about that. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably the Gore Improvement Project. And it should be nearing completion based on what I'm seeing here. So hopefully those
thank you
efforts
very
will be
much.
winding down. And for the Buellton trees, yes, there has been an effort to remove some of those. I believe that's through a maintenance effort. I don't have much additional details other than same thing. We're trying to do what needs to be done there, and yet minimize impacts to the traveling public where we can.
Thank you very much.
All righty. Thank you. Director Clark, and then Director Nelson, and then Director Julian.
Thank you, Chair Sierra. I just wanted to voice support for the item brought up by Director Hartman regarding the environmental crossing thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Nelson?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Caltrans, Director Gubbins, and the maintenance group that got after some graffiti recently in Orchid. I appreciate the quick attention there, and so did the community at large. So that's really appreciated, that how responsive you all were. The other thing is I brought up with Ms. Persons at the sub-regional a request at some point to talk about encampments on Caltrans property and just what the approach is and strategies there. Obviously, it's not a safe place for people to be, living. So, what are we doing as a region here? What as the local electeds should we expect from Caltrans, and what should Caltrans expect from us? So I just want to have that conversation. I think it's really important. You guys are obvious partners that are often most impacted by this. So I just want to make sure that I mentioned that here today and get that out there. I did it at the sub-regional with Ms. Persons, but I wanted to get that to you, Mr. Eads, as well.
Thank you. Director Nelson, through the chair again. There's a lot happening actually in the Governor's May revise with respect to aesthetics and the litter it's a challenge statewide. We've been trying to do the best we can here, but our maintenance folks are very stretched. So there's a substantial item in the Governor's May revise, a proposal for increased litter removal through a whole host of different programs and some targeted aesthetic improvements, and in terms of graffiti removal and things like that, that falls in that category. So there's a lot happening there, and the same is true in terms of the people experiencing homelessness and just all the challenges associated with that. That's again a growing and continuing statewide issue, but the Governor's May revise is really trying to throw some dollars behind addressing that. We'll be coordinating as details evolve. There's a lot that is changing and evolving day by day. And of course, it all depends on what actually ends up in the governor's budget. But we'll be watching that. I think at this point in time, if there's anything along these lines in terms of if there's a litter problem or graffiti, or there's a challenge with what's happening on the state highway system, we track every request through the customer service requests that can be submitted online. So that's the best thing to do because those are logged and tracked, and it's like csr.dot.ca.gov. So if anybody sees something they want to submit, you can do it there and follow up with me if I didn't say that clearly or have a problem reaching that location.
And Scott, let me just, on behalf of the county, as you guys get these funds, address some of these issues. Let's make sure that we're not in silos, that we're working together and coordinating, and maybe leveraging what you guys are getting and what we're getting and what our municipalities are getting to, to address these problems.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you. Director Julian.
Yes, thank you for taking my question. Several months ago, there was resources allocated for study for Highway 166, and a railroad. And I was wondering if there was any movement or update on that process, as we're getting a lot of heat from the new housing development. There's been several accidents on Obispo Street and Highway 166, which is about 100 yards or so from the railroad track. So I was wondering if there was any movement on that study.
Well, the project, sorry, Director Julian through the chair again. The project I mentioned earlier, it does sound like there will be some improvements occurring at the 166 1 junction. How much that actually relates to the railroad portion of it, I'm not certain. Mr. Luna actually may have additional details, because I know there's ongoing coordination between SBCAG and Caltrans on that. And that's something I can look into further. I don't have additional details right now on the status of that, unless Mr. Luna does or someone else.
Okay. As long as we get something.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other raised hands.
Chair
So I'm
Sierra,
moving on.
did you want some information?
Mr. Luna, Fred, please.
Yeah, okay. I think the project that Director Julian is talking about is the Pasadera development, which is the intersection improvement at Obispo and 166.
Correct.
And so there's a development agreement that's required between the developer and Caltrans, and a traffic study. And the last report we got from Caltrans was that the developer hadn't yet submitted the final traffic study. So you may want to follow up with the staff to see what the progress is on that. And then I think that was the next step to then approve the improvements, which were proposed to be a traffic signal at that location.
Good. We'll move on that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Moving on to committee meetings, we have a LoSAN report from Chair Hart.
Thank you, Chair Sierra. The LoSAN board met on May 17th, and we heard a presentation about revenue ridership and on-time performance from the last quarter. And of course, there's bad news in that. It's not a surprise, but it's still sobering nonetheless. Ridership is down 88.6%, and revenue is in parallel with that. On-time performance has increased dramatically with the reduced service. It's over 90%. It's the highest on-time performance that they've ever posted. That's obviously because there's fewer trains in the corridor, both freight and passenger. But there also has been a lot of collaborative work done to improve some of the bottlenecks, and there's hope that that better on-time performance will stick as trains are added in. LoSAN has developed a new logo, and I think Ms. Bianchi-Clement has a visual of that. It really updates the old logo, and for the first time, they were able to negotiate with Amtrak to have reference to the Pacific Surfliner in the logo. Ironically, even though LoSAN manages the Pacific Surfliner, pays for the first Pacific Surfliner, Amtrak has never allowed LoSAN to use that reference in its logo. So for the first time, those two things are connected, and it's a much, much improved logo. We also had a presentation from Sandag rail planner Linda Culp, who's retiring after a very long and distinguished career. She was talking about the high-level planning effort that's going on in San Diego County to address the bluff failures in the Del Mar area. There's a significant problem with the tracks there that ultimately are probably going to require a tunneling option, a very, very big, expensive project in San Diego County. They're probably the cutting edge in regards to addressing sea level rise issues in the rail corridor. But if you look at the pictures in Del Mar and you imagine our coastal bluff, they look very similar. And the scope and scale of the investment that's going to be necessary to do that is enormous. And then the last thing is that LoSAN plans to hold their September meeting in Santa Barbara. And so as the details of that get firmed up, I'd love to have everybody participate in some way in that event.
Thank you very much. We have no report for communications, so we move on to agenda item 14, closed session. Council, will you please read item 14 into the record?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's one item scheduled for closed session today. It's public employee performance evaluation under Government Code Section 54957 for Executive Director.
Thank you very much. And our clerk has an announcement.
Yes, I want to remind everyone who's participating via Zoom to leave the meeting when you go to closed session, so that way it's not on the Zoom screen, and then call the phone number that I provided to you via email. And then we'll come back and log back on when you're done. I'll be here.
Thank you. All righty.
Al's got a question.
Yes, Director Clark.
I got a question of Terry. If she could, email me that link to the closed session.
There's no link. It's a phone number. You're just going to call in directly a conference call, but I will send you the, I'll text you the phone number.
Perfect. Thank you.
So if someone else didn't get it, you can let me know and I will either send it via email to you or I can quickly text it.
Okay.
Oh, wait. I'll get it to you right now, Al.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, go into closed session. Is everybody here?
We have we have 5 members on Zoom and 2 members in Santa Barbara.
Is that enough?
5, 6,
7?
7, 8,
With Chair Sierra, so that's 7, right?
7.
1,
Yeah.
2,
Maybe people are still trying to log back on.
but if you have a quorum, I would just continue.
Yeah. We can just do the count.
All righty. So we are back from closed session. Does council have any reportable action?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The board met in closed session for public employee performance evaluation for the executive director and took no reportable action.
All righty. Thank you very much. With that, I am adjourning this meeting. Our next board meeting will be Thursday, June 17th at 10 a.m. Thank you all for being here today.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.